is a place I'm welcomed in. It's the mountains high, spread across a valley, green and wide. As morning filters through the trees, taking in the day, reveals the canyon's magic deep inside. The sleepy sunrise brings the joy inside.
I was born in Columbus, Ohio in May of 1937. I had a younger brother that was born in 39. We lived in the north end of Columbus in a very woodsy kind of place called Beechwold. And my father was a professor at Ohio State University, and my mother was one also until I came along. And then she quit teaching at Ohio State. And I went to the local grade school and the local high school. And when I was in the 9th grade, I got into University High School, which was a school from kindergarten through 12th grade that was run by the Department of Education at Ohio State. And it was a core school. It wasn't a regular school. It was run differently, run on a Dewey system that was developed in the 30s. And I graduated from that in 1955 and went to Ohio State in the fall of 1955, and Ohio State and I didn't get along very well, so I never finished Ohio State University. I had a whole bunch of jobs in Columbus over the years. I worked at gas stations, I worked in machine shops, I've run a carnival operation on the road for 2 years. And in 1960, we'd come off the road to the carnival. I was in the local bar and ran into a kid I'd gone to high school with, and he said, well, let's go to California and see the Times Grand Prix next month. I said, okay, I'll pick you up Monday morning. We got in a 53 Studebaker and drove out here and went to the race, which was at Riverside, which is gone, and decided not to go home. There was a grading contractor up here by the name of Carl Ingram, who had been around since the 50s, that had an office in a trailer in the parking lot of the end of the 7th Ray. And I went to work for Carl as a laborer. And here I am. Carl's long gone. Carl quit grading along about 1973 and opened and ran the gas station that is now the end of the 7th Ray. It was a gas station in the 60s and 70s. Before that, it was a church. And I slowly developed Topanga underground to what it is today. I've been doing it for 42, 43 years. We primarily specialize in doing work here in the Santa Monica Mountains in Malibu. We very rarely do anything in town. I do 3 basic things. I'm in the septic system business, I'm in the water main business, and I'm in the underground utility business, and that's probably 90% of what we do. Many parts of Topanga are just like they were in 1962. They're very little different. But there's a lot of new stuff that's been added. It's probably more than twice as big. I think there were only 4,000 people up here in 1962, maybe 5. And today there's probably about 12,000 people. So there's a lot more houses. The shopping center's expanded. The post office wasn't there. The end of the 7th Ray has survived since 1974. When Lucy came in and bought the gas station away from Carl. And there are a lot of things that have happened. In the 60s and the 70s, we had all the flower children and all the hippie stuff and everything that went on. The shopping center had a huge hippie market out in the back parking lot. I remember it was made out of railroad ties. I mean, like several hundred railroad ties, to make little booths for people to display their wares and sell things. And there were lots of gals running around with hardly any clothes on, and it was an interesting period of time. It has changed immensely. It is now much more of a upper middle class bedroom community. The days when you had a street where you had 2 college professors and a dope dealer living on the same street are gone. They just don't exist anymore. Those guys have been priced out of living up here to begin with. As I said, I bought the house for $8,000. Wasn't much of a house, but it was a house. You couldn't, I don't know what, they'd probably get $300,000 or $400,000 for the same thing today. It's not as close as it was. You don't know everybody the way that you knew everybody in the 60s and 70s. I could have walked through the shopping center and I knew almost everybody that I ran into. I can't do that today. So, is it good or bad? I don't know. It's different. And some people say it's progress, and I suppose change is progress sometimes. Sometimes it's not. Do I miss the old days? No, I think the world has to go on. I'm very philosophical about the way the thing has to work. It has to work the way it works. Well, we've had 3 floods up here, basically. We had the flood in 1968, 1969, when I worked at, basically, I'd just come to work for Carl. We had a flood in 1980 that was the worst flood from my point of view, the worst flood we've ever had. I measure floods by how close it gets to the bottom of the boxcar floor. And in 1980, Bruce Sunkeys, that owned the boxcar, he's the one that put it in, who will be known as Boxcar Bruce all of his life. He's now gone, but he opened the sliding doors in the boxcar, and there was 3 inches of water over the floor of the boxcar. Now, the water has never been that high before or since, but it couldn't be before. The boxcar wasn't there. And in 1980, it washed out the road at both ends. The road was gone down near the bridge, just below the concrete bridge at the bottom of Topanga, and the road was gone just this side of the community house in the other direction. So you couldn't get, and Old Canyon was gone. There was 15 places and there was no Old Canyon. You couldn't get to where we are right now today without going up Stunt, coming across Saddle Peak, and coming down Fernwood was the only way in and out. The water mains were broken. There was no water here in town because the water comes in from the beach and it took the water main gone. We couldn't get in, couldn't get out, hardly. And that was Saturday afternoon, the road went, about 3 o'clock. This place was like Beechwold. This is much more like living at home than the apartment in Hermosa or any place else around. So I think that's really why I came up here in the end. It was like the woods. My parents' house was on the edge of sort of a dead-end street, and there was a huge public park off one side of the house. And that's what it reminded me of. So I think that's really one of the reasons I'm here.
You still think there's plenty of wilderness around you here?
Yeah, if you drive around like I drive around, I mean, I'm driving around the hills every week, going to look at things and one thing another, and there's a lot of open space. There's still a lot of open space. And there'll be open space with the way the park system has taken things over. There's going to be open space for the rest of anybody's life anybody knows. And this is a very difficult place to build houses. It's expensive to build them, to meet all the current county rules and codes and everything that you have to meet. And it's just plain an expensive place to work. It's not like doing something down in Santa Monica where the cement plant's around the corner and the lumber yard's right over here. And it drives the cost of doing it up. And it's, at one level, that's a good thing because it keeps the number of houses that get built down at some level, just because of the financial implications. On the other hand, it crowds a certain group of people out, which is not necessarily a good thing. Because those, some of those people are very interesting. More interesting sometimes than the other part of the society. it serves a purpose. It is a, I mean, after all, for 30 years or 40 years, it was the community house. That was the focal point for AA meetings, Al-Anon meetings, you name it, right on down the way. That was the meeting place where if somebody wanted to have do something civic, that's where we met. We met at the community house. The community house is now, I don't know, it's 50, 60 years old. The first year that they had Topanga Days, which used to be called the Strawberry Festival in the 50s and 60s, was a thing that they had every single Memorial Day to raise money for the building. And the first time I went up there was probably 1963. And there was no roof and there was no floor. All that was there was the walls. Not anything else. No electrical, no plumbing, no nothing. And it's a 1950s idea about how you do that. And it served very well. I mean, it served the community for 50, 60 years and still does. But this is a little bit slicker operation. This is the county. This is much more sophisticated, much more, I mean, look what we're sitting around in. You can't do that at the community house. One of my observations in life is that people are basically driven two ways. Some people are externally driven, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. That doesn't interest me at all. I have no interest, I've never Twittered anybody in my life. I'm not on Facebook. And those people are externally driven. They need to be entertained at some level. From my point of view, it's entertainment. It may not be, but and then other people are internally driven. I don't care if I talk to anybody all day. I got enough stuff going on that that I think I need to get done. Whether it's true or not, it's another issue. But that's the way I think the things are. And I tend to think that there's a lot of people that get drawn to Topanga because it permits you to be that loner, which you can't do in town very well. It's much more difficult. And people can live up here the way they would prefer to live, where you can't do that if there's a house 20 feet away.
Got the sunlight in my pocket, got the wind around my hair, like a picture in a locket, jeweled a memory to share. Got the twilight falling on me through Topanga sycamore as the road leans up to meet me. Afternoon closes the door. Ever blessed to be here, living close to nature's core. Meadows melted into moonlight. I could never want for more. And I could never leave here. Even death knows no demise. For heaven's captured in Topanga, this wondrous place, a paradise. This wondrous place, my paradise.